This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.
The reason you want to move and exercise like this is to be able to move well, be functional, and pain-free. This is what I teach my clients, to be strong, resilient, and athletes of life. Become an athlete of life today. Send me a direct message and let's get you into the best shape of your life.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Fitness Wisdom Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about how to unlock your physical freedom, mobility, strength and functionality. So if you want to become more flexible, functional and athletic, this podcast is for you, and most importantly, how to become and stay pain-free.
But yeah, I love what you're doing with educating on blue light, and yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I do the same thing with the blue light blockers. Everybody was always like, why are you wearing sunglasses at night?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, actually, this is really good for you.
Exactly. So important to understand, because you know that light impacts every single aspect of our life, and if we do not address this aspect, no matter if we take care of our exercise and our nutrition, there's always going to be something missing, right? And that's how it was for me for many years. I was taking care of my exercise, bulletproofing my body through stuff that we're going to talk about today, and taking care of my nutrition and sleeping 8 hours every night. But I wasn't minimizing blue light after sunset because I didn't think that it was actually that important. I would love for you to share your background story, how you got into doing everything that you're doing today, because it's not really traditional for coaches to get interested, so easily into doing things like the athletic training group stuff and the knees over toe stuff. How did you get into all of this? You lost my...
I'll go for a second.
Okay.
We should be good.
Okay. What did you miss?
You wanted me to share my story, and you were saying it's not very common.
Oh, yeah. It's not very common for coaches to go into this more unconventional style of training, which I believe should become more conventional, right? Because it's highly beneficial for everybody and also our clients and all the people, and bulletproofing our bodies and becoming pain-free. So if you can maybe share your background story, how you got into all of this that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I lost 100 pounds. I probably shouldn't start there, but so when I was 22 or 23, I'd kind of gone down the wrong path in my life, at least what I consider the wrong path in my life. I had dropped out of college. I was drinking a lot. I was to the point where I wasn't showing up to classes because I was so tired and just low energy. And I knew something, once I hit rock bottom, like things happened to the point where I was like, okay, I got to change something. And the first thing I did was kind of started cooking. I went down this rabbit hole of like the ingredients of food, how what we eat affects us, right? Energy, the water we're drinking, the light we're drinking. I just that took me down a rabbit hole where I was like, wow, I've learned nothing in my schooling, in college, pretty much nothing about health. I was originally a nursing major. So I got to see kind of like that side of the American healthcare system and learn all these different things about anatomy. And I was like, wow, when I really started digging into health, I realized that like nothing that I learned actually prepared me to be a healthier human. It was more just kind of like treating symptoms and using the technologies that the American healthcare system is using to help cure people. Weren't really treating the root cause of these symptoms. They were kind of just addressing the symptoms themselves, right? They weren't really treating the root cause of illness. So I went down this rabbit hole. I started learning what it is to have true health and how you can reconnect back to nature and how that is a way to get healthier. And I just kind of started losing weight, started getting into martial arts, and I noticed I was having tons of reoccurring injuries. A big part of that was due to my nutrition. I still wasn't eating the right things. A lot of it was due to poor recovery, but most of it was also due to the way I was training, right? I was doing a ton of martial arts training without doing any strength training, without addressing my joints. And then so I started like educating myself in that, because the best way to become a better martial artist, in my opinion, is to do more martial arts, right? And you can't do that if you're having you're running into this constant cycle of injuries. So just through doing research, going to yoga classes, going to asking for help for other people I saw online that were doing well, I started going down this rabbit hole again of how to bulletproof my body, of how to be healthier and have longer joint longevity so that I could be more in the gym. And one time while I was running to get in shape for a fight, to lose weight. At this point, I was probably around 200, and my coach wanted me to fight around 180. So yeah, I went from 300 pounds, lost 100 pounds, and this was all doing conventional training, right? Kettlebells, beating my body up, overtraining, long fasts, which is these are all great tools, but it wasn't what was working best for my body. So anyways, I was getting in shape to run for. I was running to get in shape for a fight, and I started experiencing knee pain. And I started looking for all kinds of solutions online. Online just kind of told me to rest, ice, elevate, like the classic things that they tell you to do. I was taking pain pills just so I could keep pushing through the fighting, through the running. And it just wasn't, I was like, I got to find something. I had to find a solution. So I read this book called, it's by Ryan Holiday. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. And I started realizing like, hey, maybe I need to actually like strengthen my knees. So I started looking ways to do that. And I ran into Ben Patrick's site, Knees Over Toes Guys. He's known on social media. That's his nom de guerre, right? That's his like, the name that he's used to kind of help people. And I saw his story and how he'd been through 3 knee surgeries and now he's able to dunk, right? Like 10 years later. It's like, and I saw him doing all these crazy things with his knees, like the 60 squats, the reverse Nordics. And I'm like, wow, I need to learn what this guy did because he claims that he did it naturally. He claims that he did these exercises and now he's helping tons of people. Like, let me look into this, right? Mm-hmm. And I started learning his methods. I first bought the Knee Ability Zero book and started just training at home. And then within 3 months, like my knee pain was gone. I was lucky enough not to have a severe case, like some people where they've gone to the point where they're having surgery. Yeah. But my knee pain was gone, and I was like way more flexible. I'd been working on my flexibility for years, and I made more progress in 3 months than I made in the entire year, right? So yeah. I became more flexible. I got stronger. I won the Muay Thai fight that I was training for. Like nice. I felt so much more confident, more athletic than the people I was fighting. Like it was actually a tournament, right? It was like 3 or 4 fights in a day. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I wasn't even tired by the end of it. I was like, I could go on another fight. Nice. So that propelled me into doing athletic truth group training. Which is what we're doing now, right? My teammates in the Muay Thai team were like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, we see you doing all this weird training. Like, can you show us a little bit of that?" Uh-huh. And that kind of took me down the career path of personal training. Like, I started showing people, and I was like, "Wow, I really enjoy this. It's like helping people, get out of pain, get more athletic, get stronger, more flexible. It's like this technology. This is stuff everybody should know." So, like with anything that we enjoy, I started just like I couldn't stop talking about it. I just started telling everybody about it. I'm posting about it on my stories. And at the time I was working in an office, like I was a claims administrator, an assistant manager at a claims administration company that was also related to American healthcare, right? So I would see all these claims of people that were having all these issues with their health. And by this point I was already realizing like, oh, they just need to change their lifestyle. Like they don't need these $10,000 procedure or medications, right? They could probably prevent a lot of this if they just learn how to change their lifestyle in a way that's not going to be harmful to them. So I ended up still doing that, but I started doing personal training, just training people out of my garage. And I decided I wanted to make a career out of it. So I left the office job because I wanted to start learning all this online. And online coaching has a lot of certifications require you to be on a computer after you work, so that you can get your certifications, get your degree. Yeah. So I quit the office life because by the time I would get off, I was like, I don't even want to touch the screen. Like I don't want to touch the computer. I just want to do active things. And I started hanging billboards for a living. I was hanging billboards, climbing up like 100 feet up in the air and hanging billboards. And this was an active job. Uh-huh. So it was great because by the time I got off, I was like, okay, I'm ready to like get online and do my learning. So I did that for 2 years. I was hanging billboards and I was training people out of my garage as a personal trainer. And I got to the point where I felt confident enough to just say like, I'm just gonna quit my 40 hours a week hanging billboards and I'm going to start coaching people full time. So I've been doing full time training for about 3 years now and just going through a cycle of I've been through Crunch, I've been through a holistic minded gym in Georgia. Then I moved to Florida because I met with some friends who I'm living in Clearwater, Florida now, by the way. And I moved to Florida because some friends were looking for roommates. So my fiance at the time, she's my wife now, my fiance and I moved down here to live with my roommates to just be in Florida because it's a place where people take better care of their health than where we were currently at. Right, we were in Columbus, Georgia. It's actually one of the most chronically obese cities in the state of Georgia. So I saw a lot more opportunity for personal training here. It just does a lot better with my the things I think about life. People take better care of their health. There's a lot more sunlight.
Yeah.
Better weather, in my opinion. So it was like a no-brainer for us. We're like, yeah, we'll move down. And the added benefit that there's also, this is Clearwater, Florida. This is actually where ATG originated. So we moved down here to be near the gym, to learn from other coaches, to learn from Ben Patrick in person.
That's cool.
And yeah, to just level up. So it's been pretty amazing journey so far. We've been in Clearwater for about a year and 6 months now. And yeah, I love it here. It's people are friendly. I have lots of PT clients. I've been taking on more responsibility here at the gym, and basically my goal right now is to grow my in-person training, but to help the gym expand. Right, we want to build more locations, and then to eventually to start working on my online brand as well. This is something I've kind of been working on the side for about 2 years as well, 2 or 3 years, because ultimately I want to have the freedom to travel wherever I want, but still make it online and still be able to help people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome story, man. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, we all seem to enter this world either through some form of pain or suffering. So basically you kind of got into this because you also had some issues, with your own personal joints, and that's what got you into this type of work. It's the same for me. Like what made me so passionate, want to study like rehabilitation and prehab for my master's degree was because my partner Tina, she had some autoimmune type of condition which was affecting her knees. I didn't have any issues at the time, but I really wanted to understand why she's having these issues. But further down the line, I understood it was more of an immune system problem rather than a musculoskeletal problem, which is like, another whole nother rabbit hole. But I ended up learning all this stuff that you're talking about as well, alongside of, learning all about the immune system and the lymphatic system and every other system of the body, trying to understand and get her better from her autoimmune condition. And basically, yeah, it just makes you realize that how it's so important to incorporate and utilize all modalities together, not only just the one thing, just the training, but to emphasize on every single aspect of your life. Like you said, you focused on your nutrition and your lifestyle and your sleep, because you can't just do only one thing, right? Just do the training and expect some magic results, because when we train, we know that we're breaking things down. And when we are sleeping and recovering, that's when our body is regenerating and rebuilding itself. So maybe this is one of my last questions that I had actually for the podcast, but I'm going to bring it as the first one since we're talking about this. How important do you think rest and recovery is in this type of form of training that you are doing with your clients?
I think it's honestly more important than the training itself, right? I think in a lot of, because you can, like, if you work hard but you're not recovering at all, you're going to see very minimal gains, right? You're putting your body through all this stress, but you're not allowing it to recover, build the muscle. Because like muscle, tissue, connective tissue, all these things are actually built while at rest. Like you're doing the damage to your body just enough to where it doesn't bring you pain, but it does cause adaptation. And you're not going to have that adaptation if you don't give your body the rest you need. And the biggest thing is sleep, right? So if you base the things that you do in your recovery to optimize your sleep, that's what's going to give you the best thing, right? That's why light in itself is so important, right? Our light, when we go outside in the morning, you set your circadian rhythm by looking at the light. It tells your body that it's awake. It tells your body what the time and place is in the physical reality. And you need to do that in order to kind of give your body a clue of what it needs to do throughout the day to time the sleep perfectly, right? When it releases the proteins and the hormones that tell you when to go to sleep, right? Melatonin. I want to try to keep it in at least scientific terms so people understand it. But it's like, hey,
Okay.
you're setting the tone for your body at the start of the day, and then watching the sunset near the end of the day will also help you set that circadian rhythm so that your body knows exactly when to release the things that are going to help you go to sleep. And then, like blue light at night, like I'm just going off the example that you're setting yourself. When you keep seeing that blue light past the sunset, you're telling your body, hey, we're still awake. We need to still stay awake and working. So don't release melatonin yet. Don't start shutting down just yet. We
Yeah.
need to stay awake. So a
Yeah.
lot of people have these problems, and that's really the biggest thing is like your sleep. But there are many other things you can do for recovery, such as red light being one of them.
Mhm.
Helps kind of like recharge your mitochondria. The other thing is the food molecules you're putting into your body. That also plays a major role in recovery, right? Getting enough protein, even if you're
Yes.
vegetarian, just getting enough
Yes.
protein into your body so that you can rebuild those connective tissues. You can rebuild the muscles so that they come back
Yes.
stronger and better quality, right? You are what you eat.
Absolutely.
And if you're not getting enough collagen, enough protein, and enough nutrients in your diet, that's going to be a big missing key factor
Yeah.
of it, right?
Absolutely.
You need the fuel, the ATP, or the things that our cells, the energy that our cells work off of, is from three things, right? It's the food molecules that you eat, the light that you're consuming, and the water or the oxygen quality that you're getting, right? So the third thing, aside from light, diet, and the light diet, is going to be the water, the quality of the oxygen that you're consuming, right? So optimize the water that you're getting. That could be ideally spring water. That could be reionized water, right? That's the second best, or mineralized water. There's some brands that are better than others. We don't have to go into all that detail. Or reverse osmosis water, which you then remineralize, which is what I'm currently doing.
Yeah.
Just find
It's the best.
Yeah, that's the option for me. Reverse osmosis, and then maybe adding some electrolytes in
Yeah.
there afterwards. What I do.
Yeah.
But ideally, you want to stay away from tap water just because there's so many chemicals in there. You can look all this up. It's not a conspiracy theory anymore. You can look up, like, search what's in the water around me, and lots
Absolutely.
of websites will come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're consuming anything that has foreign chemicals in there that if you can't even read or understand, it's not going to be compatible with your body, right? That just goes with anything. The same with food. Like when we talk about eating food, so that means real food, food that comes from nature, that hasn't been altered by man, like, over hundreds, thousands of years that already existed on the planet. Of course, there are some foods that have been genetically altered for us to be able to consume, like some fruits and vegetables these days. Like I believe all fruits and vegetables have been genetically modified to some extent to be able to be consumed. Because when you look at primal or primitive fruits and vegetables, they look like they were unedible, with some
Yeah.
massive seeds and in a way maybe even very toxic for us. But now they have been made in a way that they have been able to be consumed by humans in quite big, quantities and quite safe. But I think that always like, when we talk about food and also drinks, it just always goes back to the roots, right? And being a human being as we were hundreds, thousands of years ago, before technology, before housing, the way that we existed in nature, I think this is the optimal way to be able to mimic if we want to be able to thrive. Because before we were thriving automatically just by being human beings, doing what
Yeah.
we do in nature. But now we have to mimic a natural environment because the environment that we're living right now is so artificial that just by living in it causes dysfunction, causes disease. So even if you are not doing something actively to make it better, you are basically going towards worse. So this is why it's so important that we are optimizing our light environment. Like you said, prioritizing blocking the blue light after sunset, wearing blue blockers, using blackout curtains, minimizing noise at night, trying to get grounded every day, like all of the things that you mentioned that are very, very good for us for getting enough cellular energy, because that's what the body requires to be able to regenerate. So I loved all the points that you mentioned. So what is functionality to you? What does it mean to be functional?
That's a great question. Well, the whole concept of physical freedom, in my opinion, is functionality, right? It's being able to do what you want to do without pain getting in the way, being strong enough to handle the things that you're doing in your everyday life or in sport. That in my opinion is functionality, right? There are some qualities that you can improve from that, but the biggest two, in my opinion, are strength and flexibility, right? Like even your stamina depends a lot on how much effort you're putting in, according to your like highest strength potential, right?
Exactly.
As well as and then flexibility is going to allow you to get into the ranges of motion that would otherwise be really hard to get into a lot easier.
Yeah.
Those are the two qualities that I tend to focus on. I've noticed that stamina and cardiorespiratory fitness also get improved a lot by these two things.
Oh yeah.
But working on your breath is another aspect as well, right? Being able to breathe more efficiently with your diaphragm, and actually training the muscles around your diaphragm.
Yeah.
So those are like the biggest three things that I focus on. It's like functionality is like, what is your survival potential, right? Like if you have to sprint, if you have to lift something heavy, like how well can you do those things, and how well is your body holding up in the ability to do those things? Like how strong are your knees, how strong are your ankles, how strong are your hips, how strong are your shoulders? These are all things that can be measured, and there's certain standards that you want to be able to do in order so that you can handle the most, right? A lot of this I try to base off of your body weight percentages for my clients instead of basing it off of just like setting like crazy standards. Like somebody who's 150 pounds is a lot less likely to be able to hit a 400-pound deadlift than somebody who's 250. So it's all based on like how athletic is your body, and by athletic I mean how much can you lift according to your body weight percentage at all these different joints, right? All these and making sure that these things are balanced as well, right? Like making sure that your ability to extend your knee is as strong as your ability to flex your knee, and if it's not, then we can work towards that because I guess that would be my answer for functionality. It's like how well do you move, and how easy is it for you to move to do the things that you want to do that are required of you. The higher those percentages are, the more you're able to, the better you're able to move, the less likely you are to get injured in general. Obviously, we can't prevent all injuries. Car crashes happen, certain things, you might fall, but we can do our best to prevent it. Make sure that our tissues are strong enough, flexible enough, so that when something like that happens, you're less likely to have like a tremendous injury because you're able to resist, you're able to handle, your tissues are able to handle more stress, and two, so that you have a higher basis that you can come back to, so that you can recover, so that it's easier to recover whenever you do have a really big injury or something like that, right? If you're able to squat, twice your body weight, but then you get injured because you landed from somewhere really high that you weren't ready to handle yet, you're going to much more likely be able to recover from that quicker than get back up to that strength quicker than if you can't even do a bodyweight squat. You know what I mean?
That's very, very true. Yeah, because it's just all about resilience, and probably the rate of injury as well will be way smaller compared to someone who wasn't trained in that way, because their tissues will have been, more well prepared to receive that stress and that load, which is basically like what you are teaching and preaching to people, right? Is to strength train their body in these full range of motion to be able to tolerate that extra stress. So how does somebody go from dysfunction to function? Like, what is your strategy? What's your approach?
Yeah. So generally, I do want to say, like, it's going back to the functionality. It's more about improving your ability, right? And I want to tie this back into your question. The more ability you have, generally, the less likely you are to be in pain. Like there aren't any studies on that because we really haven't explored that concept in science. But generally, that's the truth. And the way that you would go from dysfunctional, I guess, to the point where you're like athletic, you're at your greatest, the most physical freedom that you can have. Like you can do anything and not get hurt.
Let me just add one. Let me just add one little bit in there, because you said
Yeah,
athletic. Not everybody who is not an athlete. That means that everybody can be an athlete, right? They don't have to be
yeah,
like an athlete in a sport to actually call themselves an athlete, right?
yeah, 100%. Yeah. So what is your definition of athlete,
Well,
if you don't mind me asking?
anybody who can adapt to any environment, to be able to be explosive, mobile, strong, and capable, pretty much to be able, like you said, to have this ability. Because if they're able to adapt to any environment and any situation, and their joints are able to tolerate the load, and they're able to change direction, they're able to perceive their environment, have good proprioception to receive information and to organize the information in their body, to know what to do with that and to generate force. That's the definition of an athlete to me. So, yeah, to become an athlete at any sport, you have to have those qualities and coordination, of course, and balance. But to learn the skill is easy, right? Because that's just all about practicing the sport. But you need to have this baseline ability to be able to be a good athlete at any sport.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So you're asking me what my process is to take somebody from,
Dysfunction,
not
dysfunction.
from in pain or dysfunction
Yeah,
to athletic. Well, the biggest thing is first I want to see like how they move, right? Like where are the areas that they're weakest in that are leading to this dysfunction, right? If somebody has knee pain, it's like, okay, I want to see what ranges of motion are pain free right now, like you're able to do without pain.
mm-hmm.
And then from there, kind of see what ranges of motion we need to work on the most, right? Because not everything's going to be full range of motion. Some people might be able to do a full depth squat, but they
Yeah,
struggle to go down the stairs.
yeah,
So not able to put it's all about how much tension you're able to handle in your body, right? So I like to first take somebody through an assessment just to see where they move,
yeah.
see what the weak links are,
Mm-hmm.
because generally the 80-20 principle is like if you're really weak somewhere, you want to make that strong, and that's going to lead to more ability, to greater function.
Exactly.
So the biggest thing for me is just kind of doing an assessment, seeing what the weak links are. So that's going to be where the focus is for the first, let's say like month, maybe 2-3 months, depending on how long it takes for them to improve. And then and through that, kind of seeing what they're able to do without pain, and instead of focusing on what they can't do, instead of putting a limitation on them and saying like, oh, you should avoid this completely. It's more like, oh, well, let's see what level of this motion you're able to do without pain, and then
Exactly.
let's work on that. Let's span that,
Right.
and let's increase your ability to do that. Right, using progressive
Right.
overload, not just with the amount of weight that they're able to do, but the
Yeah.
positions that they're able to get
Yes.
into. Right, when you think of strength training and using strength training for rehabilitation, people get caught up in the amount of weight they're using, but there's actually more than just one factor of load, right? There's actually 3 different factors, right? You have well, 4. You have the time under tension, right? And if we're looking at this in an equation, you can look at it times, and then put in parentheses these other 3 factors, which are tempo, right? How fast you're doing something. Ideally, you want to work from slow to fast. You have load, which is definitely a factor. You want to work from light to heavy. And then you have position, right? You want to work, which is from shortened position, right? Let's look at like a bicep, like shortened position to lengthened position. There's going to be a lot more tension in this lengthened position than there is in the shortened position. So working from the things that you're able to do shorten to then working on the things that you're able to do lengthen, and increasing the ability and all those factors, right? Tempo, load,
Yeah.
yeah, and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's generally what I would want to see is like, okay, which one of these qualities are you most deficient in,
Mm-hmm.
and then improve those abilities.
Yeah.
Always working at a level that they can do without pain. And then pain and effort are 2 different scales as well, right? It's like you might find this really hard, but you're able to do it without pain. Well, let's continue working that at a level that doesn't bring you pain.
Mm-hmm.
So that's generally the process I take people through, and then it goes like once you're able to do things without pain, then we can start working on focusing. Once you're able to do function without pain, let's continue to work on those weak links to the point where you're more structurally balanced.
Yeah.
And then once you're more structurally balanced, you're out of pain, you can then start working towards performance, right? Athleticism.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
you can do a squat now without pain. That's amazing. Now let's continue increasing that ability. Let's start having you be able to, let's start working towards being able to do a body squat with your body weight on
Yeah.
top, right? That's going to allow you to have stronger knees, right? Usually,
Mm.
no matter what scale they're at, it's like more ability is generally the answer. Like, how am I going to get more athletic?
Yes.
Well, let's get you
Yes.
stronger. Let's get you even more
Uh-huh.
flexible, and then you can start implementing some of the things that most people where most people actually start is like plyometrics, right? Then you can start implementing like, okay, let's see what your max effort, what you can do with max effort with your current body weight, and then let's work on improving that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all a scale.
Yes.
But the truth, it's called Athletic Truth Group, right? Is a certification that I'm working through. The truth is in the numbers. It's like you're able to do these things, great. Now let's get those numbers up. Are you
Yeah.
able to squat your body weight? Great. Let's get it to you to 150% body weight. Let's get you to 200% body weight. And the truth is, like, there's certain numbers that will ensure, like, okay, most people that are able to do this don't have knee pain.
Yeah.
They don't have low back pain because
Yeah.
their tissues are built to the point where they can handle the stress
Mhm.
of 200% of their body weight. Now, there's also levels that are like, okay, most people that can do this are freak athletes, right? Most people that can do a Nordic without using momentum are generally a lot faster than people that can't do that. So then it's like you start looking at those numbers, and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, now we want to get to freak levels of athleticism. Well, let's look at what the freaks can do, right?
Mm.
Somebody like Tyreek Hill is able to do a Nordic with just like hovering and hold that position and then come back up, right? And it's like, okay, well, maybe we should be able to do what he can do. And
Mhm.
that kind of relates to how I even got started and all this stuff. It's like is recognizing like, oh, Ben Patrick can do a sissy squat into a pool and come back up, like a deficit sissy squat. It's like, oh, I want that level of ability because I know my knees are going to be more protected than if I can't.
Yes.
And the fact that he can do those things and might be related to the fact that he can dunk and I can't.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. No, great explanation. Very, very good. And just to summarize for the audience what you just said, and to explain a little bit that people don't need to be athletes or professionals to begin this, like what you're saying. You're saying is that this is a step-by-step approach. Somebody who has never trained and never stepped in the gym or doesn't have any abilities, let's take a granny who can't get out of a chair, for as an example, we can train her to become extremely able and even probably even more able than some 30-year-olds today, right? Especially if we train her progressively over time. Of course, it's going to take longer for someone like that to get to an ability like of a 30-year-old. But imagine if you are in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s and you start bulletproofing your knees. Now you're going to be super capable and you keep this up for a lifetime. We're talking about knees now, but this can be done at any part of the body, right? If we apply these principles, these are like foundational and fundamental principles that when we apply them to the body, anybody can do them. And you don't need to start from the most extreme, like Ruben is saying. It's like a step-by-step approach, and it's all about understanding the individual that you're working with to be able to get to an ability of an athlete, even if you don't want to be an athlete, because everybody wants to be able to move well, and everybody wants to be able to function well and to be pain free, right? So if you
Yeah.
want to be all those things, you got to move like an athlete. And if you move like an athlete, that's like a byproduct of all the things that we just talked about. So thank you so much for elaborating on that. So how do we unlock true mobility? Because a lot of people think that they must do a lot of passive stretching and yoga. Like, how do you see mobility? How do you think people should approach mobility?
Yeah, I think passive stretching is amazing. I think it can definitely help. I don't want to put anybody down who only does passive stretching, but generally, you don't. When you look at anything, you don't want to be like amazing at one end of the spectrum, but really weak at the other one, right? Um, if you're super flexible, but you can't move within that range of motion, right? If I can do a split, but I can't come out of that split, then that could be harmful, right? I could end up hurting my tissues, right? My tissues aren't strong enough to handle the flexibility, range of motion that I can get to. I've helped a lot of people who are hypermobile. Like they can already get into certain positions, but they don't realize that they're missing that strength component, right? They don't realize that they can actually strengthen those ranges of motion. So, for example, somebody I was helping my yoga instructor, right, the owner of the yoga studio I was going to. He had knee pain, and he was extremely flexible. He could already do a fly ground split squat,
Yeah.
but he wasn't strong in those positions, right?
Yeah.
Like his form wasn't very good. So I helped him get strong, and just that itself took care of it, right? You don't want to be too much of one thing, but I'm not enough of another. You want to lead. You want to find the balance in between.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
yeah, and that's what true mobility is being able to get into a position and out of it. Be strong in those lengthened positions. That's what true mobility
Yes.
is, right? Flexibility is a separate quality from mobility, and most people don't actually realize that. It's like
Yeah. Exactly. Because flexibility is passive, but like mobility is to have the strength to control that range of motion.
yes, yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's the meaning of true mobility. It's like, okay, you can get into these positions, but how much load can your tissues handle in this position
Yes.
without hurting? And these like active stretches, a lot of what I do is loaded stretching, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you look at a ATG split squat, just to have an example. It's like I'm loading the tissues in this lengthened position to increase the
Uh-huh.
amount of tension that they can handle
Yeah.
in any position, right? And
Yeah.
if you're able to get strong in the lengthened position, it's also going to make you strong in the shortened position. But you also want to work those shortened positions because they might target different muscles. They
Yeah.
might place a little bit more tension on the tendons. Like look at a
Yeah.
step up, for example. It might, yeah. So you want to be strong in all ranges of motions. You want to leave no weak links. You want to build structural balance. And a lot of these terms are over talked about quite often, but they're really just principles. Like you don't
Yeah.
you don't have to go do everything according to the book. It's really what works best for you and what allows you to increase athleticism.
Yes, absolutely. And well, as you said, that there are some fundamental principles, even though, people should follow like what works best for their body. There are some foundational things that I believe that need to be addressed. Like, everybody's body's anatomy is slightly different. Like we might all have different femur lengths, for example, or different, joint lengths, or different laxity in the tendons and ligaments. And of course, we all have these small variations, which makes a little bit of a difference in the squat depth and, as an example in all of this. But otherwise, the foundational principle of training the body in full range of motion, I think it goes for everybody, right? We don't want to be like training half a movement and not gaining the function, but just training it just because we want to lift heavy loads. We want to be able to train to be able to become functional. That's the whole idea of training through full range of motion. So I guess my question to you is like, why is it important to train the ligaments and joints through the full range of motion? Like, what do we get as a result of that?
Yeah, so you get stronger and more flexible. You get more mobile. You can actually grow your tendons and tendon strength through placing loads in these stress ranges of motion. So you're also, a lot of research has come out about length and partials when it comes to like bodybuilding and things like
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
You're also actually causing greater adaptation in the
yeah,
muscles. When you make a muscle, when you work a muscle in a shortened position, you don't have as much tension as the lengthened,
yeah,
like I mentioned before. So working them in this lengthened position also causes more hypertrophy,
yeah,
is what we're finding out now. And it makes you more injury resilient, which ultimately is the goal of this. Is like you're because you're working flexibility and strength at the same time. You're
yes,
making your body more injury resilient because you're able to handle more stress
yes,
in these lengthened positions, right? So that's the real importance of working full range of motion.
yeah. And this is basically the basis and the foundation of your work, right? The goal is to be able to, if you are not able to get into a full range of motion of a certain position, to eventually be able to get it just purely with the body weight, with no external load, before adding the additional load, because we want to be able to gain the ability, as you mentioned at the beginning, the function, to be able to do that, because I believe that it's a birthright for everyone to be able to sit in a deep squat, for example, and to just chill there, to be able to have that ability, or to be able to bend down and to be like pain free in the lower back, to be able to raise the arms and to be pain free. Like all of these are just abilities that we are supposed to have automatically as human beings if we live the natural lifestyle that didn't take us away from that. So what do you think? What are some contributing factors that you think that lead people to not to losing this function in the first place?
Hmm. Uh, if you don't use it, you lose it. I think is one of the things, right? um,
Absolutely.
and we didn't have chairs for the entirety of our evolution, right? A lot of people just used to sit in a deep squat. When you sit by a fire, you see a lot of Indian tribes still do this. They just sit in a deep squat by a fire. And a deep squat in itself is a loaded stretch. So they're able to maintain that mobility. They're able to get strong in that mobility just by resting just by sitting in a resting deep squat, which is something great to do for your mobility, but not everybody's going to be able to even access that right now. So it's like,
Yeah.
how do you get there? And that's kind of the process of it, right? And we've stopped sprinting as well. You don't have a lot of things to run away from. You don't. We're not being chased by tigers and lions and bears anymore. So when you don't use that ability, you also tend to lose it because your tissues aren't getting that demand for working that triple extension. You're not doing a lot of picking up your legs anymore because we're sitting all the time, right? And in this seated position, like our hip flexors are in this position, your body's going to adapt to whatever you're putting it through. So if you're doing this for 8+ hours a day, these hip flexors are going to get tight. You're sitting like this rounded when we're on a computer. Your shoulders are going to get tight. Your neck's coming down, right? You're putting a lot of strain on your neck. You're not doing any strengthening of it. Then that means that the demand that you're placing on it is going to exceed the amount of ability that it has. So that leads to neck pain. Your legs and tendons tend to stiffen because you're not pushing, we're not doing anything with those either. So these are all things that relate to the things that we stopped doing in our lives, which is climbing things, right? As well, like when you do a pull-up, you're resembling like what climbing a tree would be like. You're putting your hands on a tree and you're using those grip muscles, right? Which is another factor for longevity. So all of these things that we're just not doing anymore, that our bodies, we evolved to be able to do, that our bodies are meant to be doing, but we're not doing, are the biggest thing that makes you lose it, right? Not doing it. The brain itself, we lose a lot of brain power when we're not doing movement, when we're not expressing our movement ability, because a lot of your brain is actually designed. I mean, all of this part back here, I think it's something like 80%. I could be absolutely wrong.
No, it's true. It's true. I read it as well. It's like something like 70% of the brain is devoted toward movement.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're not doing that movement, when you're not exploring your skills and abilities to move, you're not using neuroplasticity, which is you're not enticing neuroplasticity, which inhibits your ability to learn new things, just because you're not learning new things through movement, right? So doing things like juggling, for example, or like learning new skills, that's actually going to help you improve your brain's ability to learn new things, not just physical, but also mentally, right? And being able to learn new things, I mean, that's what improves your survival potential in general, not just physical, but also mentally, right? Like if I can learn how to improve my business, I can learn how to improve my life. If I can learn how to better move my body, that's going to relate to all these things, right? So,
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. Like animals as well, how they learn how to move and to become more capable, they use play. And the importance of play is absolutely huge, even in human beings. Like when you look at an animal, the difference between like playing and hunting is a very, very thin line. In fact, when animals are hunting, they actually think that they are playing. So it's only like their primal instincts that require them to be able to survive and to their hunger to eat that actually makes them kill the animal. But in reality, at the beginning, all animals when they are born, They are always fighting with each other, biting each other, playing. When you look at cats and dogs, they're always pulling their ears. Like when they're doing these things, they are acting like they are hunting, but they're actually playing. And that's a very, very thin line between the two. And I believe that human beings are the same. Like, we love to fight, we love to wrestle. It's basically this sort of like bromance, or this way of like connecting, but at the same time, it's a means of survival. It's the way that you move your body and use your body is a way for you to be able to stay alive. So I think it's super important to incorporate play into our daily lives, because this makes us move in different ways, in different environments, and puts us in positions that we are not used to. So as you mentioned, that the function of use it or lose it, it's so important, because if you're doing things that are different, it's going to be like firing different areas of your brain. You're going to be using muscles that you never use. You're going to be sore in different areas that you're not normally used to. Like if you play something that you haven't played in a while, let's say tennis. You never played tennis, and all of a sudden you play tennis. You might be sore on your serratus muscles here, on your ribs. You may be sore on your biceps, and you'll be thinking, well, I do bicep curls at the gym. I do lat pull downs. I do all the things. I do boxing, and I train those muscles, but I still got sore. That's just because you place your body in a different environment, and now your body had to adapt to that new stressor, which is increasing your movement library, so you're becoming a more athletic and capable human being.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and freedom of movement, it's got to be earned. Freedom in general is not something you can buy. It's not something you can sell.
Absolutely.
I don't think I'm selling freedom to anybody. I think I'm guiding people towards it. Like I'm just trying to help. Freedom has to be earned. So
Yes.
regardless of it, you have to do the work. You have to, yeah. And like you said, like if your body isn't able to freely express itself, you'll find out. You'll have pain. Pain is a communication from your body.
Yes.
So you can either acknowledge that communication and do something
Yeah.
about it, right? The obstacle
Yeah.
is the way. You have to start slowly increasing your ability to handle the stress, or you can ignore it and
Yeah.
continue to try to make it go away. And you can go into this route of escapism,
Yeah.
which is a lot of what I was doing. I think a lot of the escapism that I was doing with alcohol, with drugs that led me to a point where I was 300 pounds. A lot of these
Yeah.
things come from just trying to escape that pain,
Yeah.
the physical reality.
Yeah.
And these are all
Yeah.
things, forces that we need to balance within our life, right? We could go into this spiritual topics, and we can maybe go into that in another podcast, but these are things that you have to balance within your life.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I believe health ownership. I've talked about this with many other guests on the podcast as well, that health ownership is super important. Like taking control of your own health and responsibility, because if you don't take responsibility for your life and what you do on a daily basis, because it's what we do consistently on a daily basis which has the biggest impact. If not on a daily basis, at least on a consistent basis, whether that is weekly or monthly or whatever the consistency is, there has to be some form of consistency in a specific routine, in a specific habit that we are doing, which is helping to build our health, because we have to have things that are building our health, and then we have to be also avoiding the things that are taking away from our health, because now in our modern world we have many things that are taking away from our health, such as like the artificial blue lights after sunset, right? So we want to be avoiding those things, and we want to be also doing all the things which are benefiting us, so we can be in a net positive. But if we are doing all the things and we are having all the other things that are bad for us, and we are not removing them from our life, we might still be in a deficit in our health, because we're not removing all the things that are causing us the harm in the first place. So we want to be doing both things at the same time if we truly want to thrive and be in vitality.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, well
next
said.
question. What are your best tips and best practices for a bulletproof body?
Hmm. I think we can talk about maybe the ATG principles in that case.
Let's go.
So a lot of this, I have to give full credit to my mentor, Ben Patrick, and Keegan Smith. Right, they're the two that kind of founded what we know as Athletic Truth Group Online Coaching now. And I've learned a lot of this from them, from Ben Clarfield as well. But number one is build from the ground up. Right, if you want to build a bulletproof body, the part of your body that makes the most contact with the earth is our feet. right? So start building from the ground up, ankles to knees, knees to hips, hips to shoulders, because you can always be, you can be too strong for your ankles to handle, right? You can be too strong at the hip for your knees to handle. You can be too strong in the core for all these other parts to handle, but you can't be too strong at your knees for your ankles to handle. You can't be too strong at your hips for your knees and ankles to handle, right? So it's like build from the ground up. You want to be built like a rocket. You don't want to be built like a anvil, right? You want to be you want to be strong from the ground up.
Yeah.
So building in this order, doing a lot of strengthening for your feet, for your ankles, will help you to be more balanced. It's going to help you jump higher. It's going to help you be less injury prone, right? If we look at all the top athletes throughout history, like Michael Jordan, for example, had super strong calves, super strong ankles, and he was able to avoid less injuries, and that's one of the things that made him one of the greatest of all time. He was able to practice more than other people because he was genetically gifted in that sense, or maybe he also trained that way.
Yeah.
Building balance from side to side, right? Making sure there's no imbalances with your knees, with your ankles. All these unilateral exercises help a ton, right? You don't want to be built like a crab and have one arm that's huge but then another one that's tiny, because then you won't be able to bench press as much, for example.
Yeah.
Building from front to back, right? I spoke on this earlier, right? Make sure your knee extension is just as strong as your knee flexion. Your push-pull is balanced as well. That helps to avoid shoulder injuries. And yeah, there's many examples I could give with that, but if you're strong from front to back, you're able to avoid more injuries, right? Before getting your squat to 400 pounds, you may also want to get your leg curl to a certain level as well. Building both short range and long range, right? It's not good if you're able to deep squat, but you can't go down the steps, right? You want to be strong in all these different aspects of movement. And then building from light to heavy, right? You want to be able to start light and at a level that your body can handle with good form, so you're able to get the most out of the exercise. Dominate the weight, be able to dominate a certain weight before you go to a heavier weight, right? We see a lot of gym fails are from people just starting really heavy, even though they're beginners, and they end up getting crushed by the weight or something like that. And if you want to avoid that, if you want to avoid injuries, it's best to be patient with your progress. And you're going to get a lot more out of dominating a weight and being able to dominate form before you go super heavy and you're just doing it with like terrible form.
I mean, people can make so many gains just purely from their body weight. They don't even realize. Like, even like somebody was never trained at the beginning and they start training, like full range of motion, and they do it correct and they build the function and the technique and they build the strength from that full range of motion at the bottom all the way to the top in any exercise, because it just basically goes the same for everything. You are going to become so athletic and so capable. But if you train from the beginning and you're a newbie and you train everything halfway and you never go full range, what's going to happen is you're going to be, as you said, you're going to be weak on some aspects of the position, and that's going to put you at massive risk of injury. Because what happens if you go past that half range that you have always trained and you go into that weak spot? You are going to end up crushing yourself or doing something extremely dangerous to yourself. So it's very, very wise to work with someone like me or Ruben, where you can train your body in full range of motion, right? And to become more functional and athletic. And I feel like at the beginning, there is this fear in individuals when they join a gym or they join any kind of like training program. They have this fear in going in full range because it might hurt their knees a little bit, or they doesn't feel comfortable. Do you experience this with clients as well, where they say to you, oh, I can't go there, but then you say to them, yes, you can, don't worry, you got this? Or you give them some form of support, maybe some handle to hold for their hands, or some way to give them that reassurance, that safety, that it's all good. And once they get there and they do 1 or 2 reps, then they start building that mental confidence, because their body actually has the ability, but in their head, they think that they can't do it. Have you had this experience before?
100%. Yeah, I think, and that's something that I pride myself in the most, is empathizing with them, because I've had that same fear before, but it's all about dispelling the fear, right? Fear is the enemy. So finding a way to get them to be able to do that motion without pain, right? It could be, you could start assisted if you needed to. You could start with the shorter range exercises to then unlock deeper ranges of motion.
Yes.
Well, that's what most people neglect to do is like, hey, if you can't do a bodyweight squat yet, maybe do an assisted squat. You know, it's, a lot of the times it's negotiating with your ego and trying to break past those beliefs, right? That's why movement in itself can be so expanding. You release emotions through movement. So without getting too deep into that, it's like that's all of the principle of building from light to heavy is like, hey, you might have to start super light. You might have to start negative weight, right? You might have to start with like assistance. And I'll have people even use the cable so that it's more measurable. Like, oh, I'm doing it with 50 pounds today. Maybe next week I can do it with 40, right? I'm able to do this with my pain. Or with bands, or even taking 2 chairs. Like, I don't know if you can see me here, but like starting a system with 2 chairs and doing a squat here can have great benefit because we know that the loaded deep squat helps to strengthen the tissues, for example, right? So doing that full range of motion with assistance can be very, very helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And the thing is that it's all about granting the access from the nervous system, giving that reassurance to the person that because many times it's not that they don't have the strength. It's just that their mind may be limiting their ability for their body to trust the process. And once you show them that, you know, that what you're doing is safe by giving them like progressions and starting them off a little bit easier. For example, if you say to somebody, if you show them a movement, let's take as an example like a sissy squat, so like a knees over toes sissy squat, and you show them this movement, the most extreme version, where you're like going all the way down and you're leaning back, and you say to them, okay, your turn. They're gonna look at you like, I can't do that. But if you say to them like, okay, let's start off by just touching the knees on the wall and just leaning back a little bit, and then slowly progressing this, you know, until you get deeper and deeper into the position. Now mentally they're able to tolerate this, and then they're able to do it. Of course, it depends on the person's capabilities on their joints and stuff like that, and if they're able to do that. But some individuals are able to do that from the very beginning. They just need to be able to unlock it in their mind that what they're doing is safe. There's also a balance factor, coordination, because there's many different aspects, right? Qualities going into these types of movement. It's not just strength like on a machine. You have to add the coordination, the breathing, the rhythm. So once you get all of those things together, then it just feels like something magically unlocks.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you have to work at the speed of trust, right? As you're able to unlock, as you said, with your own brain, you're proving to yourself that you are able to get into these ranges of motion. Then next time you can start doing it a little bit harder, slowly but surely dispelling that fear, right? Work at the speed of trust, and you want to think of it like love and freedom are to what are to slavery are the same. Sorry, love and freedom are the same as like are to love is to freedom what slavery is to hate, right? It's like you're slowly dispelling that fear, right? You're slowly getting more and more love into your body. You're slowly showing yourself that you can do more, and slowly dispelling that freedom.
Oh,
So, I think
that's so
that's
true.
great. Principle number 6 is building from long to short duration, right? So maybe starting with a little bit of reps that you're able to handle without causing too much damage to your tissues, and then that leads to pain. Working to more reps. So it's like using progressive overload, not just with load, but also to how much you're doing as far as repetitions. Right? So you can start with like 5 reps, and it's like, okay, I can do this. Maybe next week I can go for 8. You know, just being gentle. And then another principle, build from slow to fast, right? That's principle number 7. And we can look at that from the tempo aspect, right? How fast you're doing something determines how much load is, how much tension you're putting on the tissue, right? So if you start being able to control a squat on the way down, then that guarantees that you're able to do with that same amount of weight later on a little bit faster, and so on.
Yeah, nice.
Number 8 is building and keeping a bulletproof reserve. So this relates a lot to the balance of front to back, right? Being able to handle the force, the output that you're putting out with the things that absorb the shock of it, right? So like being able to squat as much as you're able to being able to do hip extension with as much weight as you're able to do hip flexion.
I see.
Because these are the things that handle it, right? And then number 9 is truth in numbers, keeping track of how much you're able to do in these movements. And we already went into why more ability through
Yes.
load and through form. 8 gives you more freedom.
Yeah.
And principle number 10 is the most important. Pain free sets the gains free. Right? Pain is your body, as we said, sending you communication. You can listen to it and use it as a guide,
Yeah.
or you can ignore it and get more of what you're working through. Right? If you ignore pain, if you push through pain, that's going to lead you to more pain. If
Yeah.
you use it as a system, as a signal to do things that you can do without pain and improve your ability on those things, it's gonna be your guide towards freedom,
Yeah.
right? Pain, look at pain as a positive thing, instead of it just changes the lens of how you look at
Yeah.
things, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really what it's all about is taking taking these low vibrational things of pain, of shame, of hating movement,
Yeah.
and transmuting them into love, into freedom, into ability.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what gets people out of pain. It's really a mental thing more than anything.
Oh, yeah, it really is because pain is so much in our head, because that pain is not really like a big deal. It's just more of what do we make of it or how do we process things. And, when I got into this type of work and I started to implement more of this, like, knee ability stuff into my program, I didn't have any specific issues with my joints, right? But I started to do it because I wanted to have the ability to do that. So I wanted to be able to do my knees over toe squats. I wanted to feel like I'm more capable and more resilient in case I find myself in those positions where I'm more vulnerable, right? To be able to tolerate that load and that stress. So when I started doing it at the beginning, my knees did have a little bit more cracking, there was like a little bit more pain and discomfort, but I got like the pain signal where I felt like, okay, I can't do anymore right now within this session. So
Yeah,
basically, so then I just took a break and I didn't do it again for a week. I took a week off and then I went back to it and I did it again. And now the cracking was way less on the knees and the pain was also way less. So that means that I actually adapted extremely well to the exercise and now I'm able to do more reps and more sets with experiencing less pain. So the thing is that a lot of times people should not confuse the good kind of pain, which is what you need, to break down tissue, compared to the kind of pain which is more, let's say, inflammatory or very aggravating to the body, right?
yeah, 100%. That's well said, man. Yeah, I've seen that case quite a bit actually. What you just said, but you were asking questions, right? You reached out for help to people, and you found out your own way of what your body can handle, which is, I mean, it's very empowering where you're able to figure these things out. And that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that kind of what led you to being a coach as well? It's kind of like solving your own problems.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, my journey started when I was 14 years old. I was overweight, like an obese individual, and I just wanted to change my life because I was getting bullied at school and life kind of sucked, right? So I just felt like I want to change. So I went to the gym and I started training bodybuilding style training for the first 7 years of my training career. Now I'm 29 years old, so I've been doing this for almost 15 years, like training for 15 years.
Yeah.
And after 7 years of training, more like bodybuilding style, I had become very good aesthetically and lifting a lot of weight in the gym, but I wasn't very functional. And then when I met my partner, Tina, she was more into functionality, yoga, mobility, this kind of stuff, functional training. So she
Yeah.
introduced me to this world, which I didn't know existed, because before I thought that the reason you go to the gym is to do bodybuilding. You don't go to do like functional training or yoga or whatever. So anyway, I started implementing these other training modalities into my training routine, and I started to notice that my lifts of my bodybuilding stuff and my powerlifting started going up a lot.
Yeah.
And then I realized, wow, it's actually super important to not only train and build your body, but to also train it for function. And now this is what I teach my clients as well, to have everything together.
That's amazing. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I
Sorry,
couldn't agree more.
my throat got it right.
Cheers, you're good, man. Yeah, I love that we were able to connect, and that's the beauty of the internet, right? It's like putting like-minded people together. And yeah, I think I mean, if you're down for it, we should do another one because there's a lot more we probably can talk about. And yeah, you're cool, very cool guy, man. I love what you're doing.
Appreciate
Uh,
it.
I think it's huge, especially for people to focus on mitochondrial cells, right? Like, what is the mothership of energy in our bodies? It's the mitochondria, right? When you
Absolutely.
break it down to cellular level,
Yeah.
that is one of the aspects that's going to bring you the most health, right? The 80-20 principle is optimizing your mitochondria. Um, yeah, what do a lot of people consider God? It's energy, it's light. And
Absolutely.
mitochondria is the mothership for bridging the divine and the physical within our bodies. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think what you're doing and focusing on is amazing. I love it, and I'm happy to be able to provide some value to it today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing all this awesome wisdom. Do you have like any last words of wisdom you'd like to share with the audience before we end?
um, yeah, man, everything is mental. 2025 is coming up,
Uh-huh.
and the biggest thing, you can be what you will to be, and you have to write it down in the paper to bring that into the physical reality. So
Mm,
these next few days are crucial. Like, figure out what you want to do in 2025. No matter, shoot for the stars. You have to shoot for the stars to get to the moon. So you have to make these big goals happen and try to manifest them into reality in this new year. And don't be afraid to go big. Let's make it happen. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, believing in yourself, the mindset is everything, like you said. I think it's super, super crucial because if you don't believe in yourself, who's gonna believe in you, you know?
Yeah.
No one believes in you more than you yourself. Like the same thing as who takes care of the best of your health, like you. No, like your doctor doesn't actually care more about you than you do. That's why you go to the doctor, because you actually care about yourself, right? So this is
Yeah.
why it's so important that everybody takes that responsibility that we were talking about earlier, that ownership, from the mindset side of things, the health side of things, spiritually. Every single aspect of your life requires you to dive deep and to have some form of participation. You don't have to be an expert in everything, but at least, show a passion or an interest towards one aspect of your life, and that will start to reflect on other areas of your life. Because if you become consistent on one thing, let's say with your business, that will also make you want to be motivated more about your health and your relationships and so forth. So it's going to go on like this. I would like for you to share where people can find you and connect with you, and if they want to work with you, Ruben, because I will be posting this on Spotify and YouTube as well.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. Um, you can find me at Physical Freedom Guy on all platforms. I believe the only one that's a little bit different is Twitter, but it's just Physical Freedom One, I believe. And yeah, Ruben at physicalfreedom.org. If you're looking to train, send me an email or send me a DM on Instagram. I'm looking to take on 5 more clients for the new year. So I want to help you change your life, get out of pain, and yeah, kickstart this new year the way that you want to, right? Everybody's goals are different. So what I do is very personalized. So yeah, let's chat. I just want to be of service. Yeah, I just want to help people. And if you're in Clearwater, Florida, I'm at Rift Fitness Gym. It's an amazing gym. I'll have to take you through a tour of it sometime. But yeah, let's grow into the new year together. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Thank you for sharing your information. I will be linking everything in the description show notes as well, so people can find them easily for you. And I think, go ahead.
Yeah, I gotta have you on the podcast as well. We got the Physical Freedom podcast. If you wouldn't
Oh,
mind
really? I
sometime.
didn't know that you
Yeah,
had a podcast.
no, probably. I don't advertise it as well. I'm on like episode 15 now, but I
Okay.
generally have coaches and other people in the movement community.
Oh, I would
Where I
love
just
that.
kind of
I would be honored to come on.
absolutely, brother. That'd be amazing because I just want to really. I'm curious. Like, I want to know, like, okay, what are your methods? What's your story? And yeah, just share that with the world, my audience, and give people value. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Let's do that. Yeah, I feel like today we provided the audience a lot of value. We taught people how to become physically free. I think that's super important and super, super empowering, because if you're able to move well, to be pain free, to be functional, That's like literally like the greatest gift, right? You know, if you're not in pain, like what can you complain about in life? You know, you can achieve anything. Everything else is in your mind, like we were mentioning. So I think that yours and my message is super important, and people will find a lot of value in this. And we gave people a lot of great tools as well by explaining to them the fundamental principles that you need to go through to be able to achieve a physically able body. Like it doesn't take, it's basically common sense, right? A lot of the stuff that we're talking about. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
awesome.
This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.